type of breakfast do you eat today? This might seem really awkward, but no matter what the answer is, if you are eating breakfast, great job. You're a decision maker for today. Within a day, it's impossible not to make any choice, no matter what. Whether it's the type of clothes that you're wearing, the type of transportation you take, including me talking on TEDx right now, is a choice. It's a fact that our life is made up of engaging with a variety of decisions. There are unnecessary ones, but also important ones that can make crucial impact in life, like choosing a DP course or a university study. So the reality is we don't make those big decisions as much as it's ordinary. By ordinary, I don't mean to choose which breakfast you eat, but ones that can still make a relevant impact in life. Here's my own example. Some students can also relate. This when an assignment doesn't get turning on deadline. This occurs to me frequently after receiving a notification from the teacher. I usually complain about the short duration of the task, the teacher not giving an extension, or there's simply too much homework. But let's break it down. The math assignment is due in 2 days. We're starting in lesson 1 and we're ending lesson 2. There's 1.5 days of schoolwork and 2 periods of homework. What I thought to myself was that 2 days were short. But what actually happened was that I used the first 30 minutes to get familiarized with the text. When I got home, I was really confident that I'm going to finish this within a few hours. So I started watching YouTube. I watched for a few hours and I never went back to the work. By next day, I completely forgot about my priority. So when I got home, I realized that I have now 2 more assignments. And I spent 1 hour to refamiliarize and to start over the task. But by 11 p.m., I was not even halfway through. I'm not saying that there aren't occasions where workloads are overkill for students, especially for senior students or students in TDP. But my example is obviously a time management issue. But if you think about it, using your time is also making choices. As my primary reason for my failure was not due to my poor mathematical skill, it was due to my poor decision-making skills. So you might not be wondering, how do I make the good choices? Well, research shows that there are 5 steps on making a good decision. First, identifying the goal. Second, gathering information. Third, knowing the consequences. Fourth, making the choice. And finally, evaluate. But knowing those 5 steps doesn't mean a good choice is inevitable. As if you ask me how much bad mistakes I made in that math assignment, the answer will be simply frightening. But what we can do is to ask ourselves, what did we do exactly? This is a lot of self-condemn because we're trying to reflect our process of decision-making and start patching them with the idea of what we did wrong. I'm not saying that we shouldn't value our smart choices as success to be what we're aiming for ultimately. One of the founders of Apple, Steve Jobs, was fired from his own company in 1985 after Macintosh has failed miserably on the market. After leaving, he and 5 senior Apple employees started their own innovation for the company Next. 8 years later, his company managed to generate a revenue of over $1 billion. So in 1997, Apple, at the verge of bankruptcy, purchased his company and restoring his position as the CEO of Apple. And as all of you know, Apple is one of the most successful tech companies as of right now in the world. And Jobs was able to make it in 10 years. Steve Jobs later said that he was glad that he was fired from his own company for a while, as it gave him the space for innovation and establishing his own private company. Of course, we're not Steve Jobs, and most of our actions won't be decisive moments in history. But this is a perfect example of using the mistakes as a tool to enhance the results. Jobs made a mistake at first, but he managed to utilize his failure to his advantage. So out of the 5 steps we talked about, we're now focusing on step 4 and 5, making the choice and evaluation. These are the two steps that we struggle on often. That we often struggle on. And we all want to get better at it. It's not a sin to be a bad decision maker, but it is not okay to be a bad learner. After we make a bad choice, we get the feeling of never wanting to make it again, but stumbles on it again anyways. So, what exactly is the cause of that? So this occurs frequently to me because I'm not a very, very good decision maker myself, as I make stupid choices really often. But making a bad choice actually gives you a measure of what you have and what you're missing. Here's an example that I discovered recently in a conversation with my former PIP teacher. I once got in trouble in his class for asking a question twice. I was really confused at first, but later figured out the reason. There are 3 factors. First, the teacher doesn't like a question being asked twice. Second, he doesn't like answering a question that he already answered before. And finally, he especially prefers no interruption in a conversation. So the ultimate solution for it is that, first, listen to the teacher's instruction carefully, as I should be. Second, if I want to ask a question, I need to inquire in another way. And third, finally, under all those solutions above, do it when the teacher is not in a conversation. And this experience did not just mean that how to improve when asking a question to a teacher, but this also let me think about my social issues. So without this experience, I would never be able to know how I can improve myself, my tone, or the way I speak to adults and teachers in school. So we talked about the definitions of making a good or a bad choice. Now we're really beginning to see the benefit. But there are also setbacks, possible setbacks in the process. For example, the worst thing that you can, no matter if you're a good decision maker or not, the worst thing you can do is to ignore it without reflecting. Because refusing to know the reason equals to failing to understand your personal strengths and weaknesses. Because what will happen is that there's going to be no change. And you're making the same mistakes every single time. And the worst case scenario is not learning, exactly, not learning from what you have done wrong. But as a student and a learner of NIS, we always talk about student voice and student choice. So student choice doesn't exactly mean to teach us how to make the good decisions, but also to give us the freedom and experience to make those choices, to let us fail. But more importantly, knowing the reason, every reason behind our results. So we're going forward by gaining knowledge to our field. As time goes on, we know how to contemplate our weaknesses, and thus we can dominate our choices, not the choices dominating us. So after processing the mistakes and choices in our brain, we can get better at it time to time. And finally, the good side of making the bad choices in some occasions is that making a mistake in a teacher's class or failing on a math assignment isn't a life and death situation. And we've talked about those 5 steps in the beginning. Right? They're all achievable after making a bad choice. Identifying the goal, knowing what you need to do, research or gathering information, predict potential factors that can cause our goal to fail. So knowing the consequences, prepare for a failure. Decision, making the decision. Do it only after reflecting from what we did wrong last time. And finally, evaluation. Discuss in your brain, have you made a good choice? If not, how can you change next time? Profiting from the negatives can give us the power of making the correct choice in the important moments of our future lives. There's probably now a better idea of making the so-called bad choices now. Then the word bad makes it sound awful. Use 1 second to turn the word awful to awesome. Make plenty of choices, learn from them, no matter if they're good or bad. Make every decision of yours a win. Thank you.